Good evening, everyone. It's the Hot Take with Chrissy. And tonight we have a fantastic show. Chrissy's in the house, Will is in the house, and here we go.
Welcome to the Hot Take with Chrissy and Will. Tonight we have a guest, Miss Jennifer McGee with McGee Law from Palm Coast, Florida, and we are very fortunate to have you tonight. So thank you for coming in. And tonight's discussion is going to be about family law. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, we'd like to know a little bit about you and your law firm.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about the invite, so I'm glad to be here. It is McGee Law in Palm Coast. We've been open for a little over 2 years. My passion is family law, so I'm excited for the topics tonight. We do some other stuff, estate planning and probate, so we can help you out with some other things, but family law is our passion. It comes from personal experience, so I take it to heart when I have my clients, and that's me.
So what is your favorite aspect of being a part of family law?
I think for me, going through it personally, you kind of walk into a lawyer's office, it's stuffy, he's kind of telling you what's going to happen, you give him kind of what's going on in your life and what you think is important because it is family law and it's your family, and they go, yeah, and then you walk in a courtroom and you're like, what just happened? He didn't listen to anything I said. So I really like educating my clients on the law. And while there's really important things happening in your life during that time, there are things that the law just doesn't care about. So I try to educate them so they understand it going in there, so there isn't this feeling of being cheated by the court system or what just happened or not being listened to, because it's so important.
Yeah. So Will over here, he's a private investigator, and I would like for you to explain to the audience, I don't know if you use private investigators on your case. I know other lawyers have used them. And what scenario would you want to use a private investigator, and how do you guys work together in child custody cases or child support cases or family law just in general?
So it's very broad. There's a lot of areas. We do use private investigators, absolutely. It can come when it's child abuse. Sexual abuse is probably the worst of what you see. It can also be social media. People are hiding that they have their own business. They're working off the books on the weekends. Right. All kinds of things, that they're lying about where they're taking the kids, that someone else is watching the kids, who's around the kids.
That's very common.
Yes. So there's so many things that we use private investigators for, and it can really be crux to a case, especially child custody. Finances are big, but that child custody is where they really come in handy.
It's huge, and especially like substance abuse issues. Catching someone abusing certain substances, and or let's say as a child custody agreement, and they're violating that by, let's say, consuming alcohol or doing certain drugs.
Correct. Substance abuse is another very big area. You're absolutely right.
Well, this ties in. So if somebody comes to you and say they have an ex that hasn't been around, or an ex-parent in a while, and your client's telling you that they haven't been around because of substance abuse issues or alcoholism or something, and and they're denying that, what would you recommend, or what would you do to try to help your client make sure that the safety of the child is at the best interest of the child, and everything's taken care of?
I tell you, a private investigator is invaluable in situations like that, because it is so hard to prove. If they don't have charges or something that's on paper of what they're doing, it is very difficult to just make accusations in family law.
Very true.
So private investigators are fantastic for that.
So DUIs would be huge.
Those are helpful.
Yes.
DCF reports, documentation. What other documentations would you look for?
Getting picked up for substance abuse, being in a rehab, and sometimes being admitted to the hospital, overdosing. There's a lot of things we can document. Baker acted. So there is a lot of documentation, witnesses. A lot of people don't want to get involved.
Right.
So it can be difficult. So that is an area, especially when you're in an area where somebody's maybe doing it enough that it endangers a child, because they can't watch a child under the influence, but not enough that they've lost their job or that they didn't make it to work on time, that so they might be, out partying on Friday night or having
true.
people partying in their house with their children.
Oh yeah, seen that.
And you don't, and that you're not
So
committing
I
a
guess-
crime, right?
Yes.
So I guess that's where you would come in
Yeah.
and get the pictures of them at the bar or
Yeah,
buying the beer or,
do a little bit of surveillance, yes.
Yeah.
And, check out how much they're drinking. Now I'm not going to say the person is drunk, but I'll say that observe the person. Let's say document that person and have it on the reports and videotape documentation, which in court, when you see someone is staggering once they come out of a bar, that is proof.
you can put two and two together.
but they should be home with
Yeah.
their kids.
Yes.
So that's the most important part. But again,
Yeah, it's all about those little notches. It takes evidence, and family law is all about like every little extra thing that you can show on your side to give you credibility. Credibility is everything.
everything. Once you lose that, that's gone.
Right. So if you say I wasn't at the bar,
Right.
and then we have a video of you at the bar, your credibility is
That's
just
it.
so down the toilet.
That's
I
right.
have a
That's right.
question that came in earlier actually regarding this. What if you have addiction or something along this title and you're in and out of the child's life, there's no consistency for years and the other party has to put up with it and try to do what's best for their child, does that weigh with a judge when you go in front of a judge because you can see the inconsistency, or say they call the child drunk and they're just not in a place that
So if this is where I think it's important when people are listening to their clients, because when you just go by the book in family law, you miss so many opportunities. So if you can show a pattern to a judge, you can put a safety plan in place. So if you haven't seen a child in 6 months or a year, now you can't just jump back in and see him for a weekend.
Right.
We don't know where you're going or what you're doing. We don't know where you live. All kinds of things happen. So we can make it so that they can only see him for a few hours at a park. And you have to do that consistently for a period of time before you can upgrade to an overnight. So those are things you have to ask the court for. They're not going to give it to you if you just go in and say, he's doing this, do something. You have to ask for it.
you have to ask for it.
And you guys are the heroes because
Yeah.
you're the ones that draft these parameters or these borders that say, hey, you can meet up with the child in a controlled environment. And so it really helps out.
So the home, when you go in there, say it's a little hotel room or something real small and they don't have room for a child.
So
In situations like this, I know,
yeah, so that's not always a deal breaker. It depends.
Yeah.
Which is, we say that a lot in the law. It depends because lots of people are getting divorced and now they're adjusting to providing 2 homes and 2 places to live. So if dad or mom is in a hotel room with the kids for a short period of time, it's okay because they value that time with the parent. So it is important that they still get to see their parents, spend that time with them. A lot of times they'll even order a parent who lives for 5-6 hours away to come to the county the child lives in, stay at a hotel and visit them there instead of dragging them that 5-6 hours consistently. So that's acceptable. But it's when, what hotel is it? What part of neighborhood is
Right.
it in? Who's in and out of that hotel room? Those things come into play. And it's not usually a permanent situation. That's usually just a temporary one. Or even a small apartment is okay.
yeah.
Right. You care
But if
about
you
safety.
pull up and you smell weed or you see people drinking alcohol outside or, I know we've talked about this before, even the FDLE website, you want to make sure there's no predators around or
Yeah.
that the child is
Yes.
safe.
Yes.
So that's one of the most important things.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a case where it was actually a neighbor who was acting aggressive and scared the children, screamed and yelled at them outside, and that actually became a piece of her living near this neighbor, became a problem for her to have the children there.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, so it really, all these little things matter.
So you said for the child, they start slowly. So are there any tests that the judge can order if someone has an issue but is saying they don't, that can help prove that in court before a child's released into their care even for a couple hours at a park?
Yes, so I had one where somebody was present at somebody who overdosed. They were present, and it was just mentioned in a police report, but that was enough to order drug testing before they could see the child. So things like that, there's a request for, you can have to see a psychologist, you can have to have a substance abuse evaluation, there's all kinds of things you can do. What I will say though is, our job, my job, is slow. It's, most things aren't emergent, most things take time. Knowing that there's a substance abuse problem and having any kind of credibility with it, you can get in there and get things done quickly. But outside of that, some of the stuff that really is bad for these kids, it might take me 6 months to a year. If DCF won't help, if the police aren't jumping in because they're not seeing a big enough problem, I can do it, but my job is usually 6 months to a year.
Very difficult too, yes.
Yeah.
And if you have a child custody case, how long is the average if they don't agree?
Probably a year is minimum.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
it's long.
I'm
It's
sure
hard
the
on
caseload
people.
here is crazy. And
Yeah. If we don't have something like a substance abuse problem or abuse, settling is always the way to do it. Mediation,
Right.
come on guys, give something up and work it out, because the court system is unfriendly, long, and expensive.
Right.
And it just hurts the family.
And
Yeah.
most judges are 50-50, in the state of Florida. So it's like, hey, basically you're going to spend time with your child,
Yeah.
Both parents have to spend time with
Yep.
their child. So.
well, can you explain the new 50-50 law?
Well, I can't quote it, but it is a default to 50-50. And so they just it's really given fathers, I think, more empowerment.
Oh.
Because in the past, a woman, especially out of wedlock, a woman has the custody.
Yeah, she was primary, yeah.
Yeah, she has
all the way,
custody.
right.
Even still now, if she doesn't put his name somewhere,
Right.
she's got that custody. So he has to go get
Especially if they're not married.
yes,
Right.
exactly. So it's changed that a bit. Men have more rights right away, which is, super important. They need, you need both parents in your life. But it's made a lot of moms nervous, I think. But it's empowered parents and men who've maybe been absent. I think you're seeing more and more actually assert that time with their children, which is great for the kids.
Right.
But everything, even financial, is 50-50. When you do the divorce, you start there and you move the needle. It's all about circumstance. Family law really allows the judges discretion. So when they hear about your family, they can move that needle.
Right.
You live 3 hours away and they have to get to school. You live 2 hours away and have to get to school. Get up at 6 in the morning. Is that really in their best interest? So how can we give dad as much time as possible without making the kids, drive 2 hours
Absolutely.
to 50-50 custody? It's usually more of a 60-40.
Are you also seeing the flip side of it, that dads or moms that have not been involved in the child's life for years now all of a sudden show up for 50-50 because they're like, maybe if I get it, I don't have to pay child support?
100%.
And
Of course.
when you go in
Yes.
front of a judge, I would love to know how they're going to explain where they've been for 5 or 6 years when you were not grandfathered into that 50-50.
So, they don't have to give a lot of explanation.
They don't.
have a constitutional right to see their kid. I have one that he was 14 years old. Didn't even want to see him. He'd never been there. He had a stepdad who kind of stepped in. Dad's like, well, now I want my 50-50.
Right. It's become co-parenting's a new concept.
He's entitled to it.
He's entitled.
So you
right.
really need to build up, you need to have, you could get a guardian ad litem who speaks for the child. You don't want to drag the children into court. I've done it a couple of times. I usually try to lean on my guardian ad litems. You can do social investigations. And a child who gets a little bit older has a say. They always have a little bit of a say, but the older they get, the more they'll listen. But they also counter, you have the teenage kid who's like, mom's being a pain in the butt and I don't want to be there.
Right.
So they know that's a thing, and the kids will be like, it's horrible there, I don't want to be there. So they know. So they, you have to balance it. But if you don't have people who are invested in your situation and they're just filling out your paperwork, you don't know what's going to happen. And now your kid is somewhere, and you really could have gotten something that was better for you and your child. So, yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. So when you're looking at financials for child support, how in depth do they get when you have to reevaluate your finances in front of court?
Yeah, so there's a list of mandatory disclosures, and they are pretty in-depth. So it also depends on your attorney and you. So the two people can say, I know he works at Costco, and I know what he makes, I know he's there 40 hours. And I work here, and I have my 40 hours, and we know what the income is. Okay, what's the numbers? And there's a calculator, you put it in. Other people are, where's the Venmo, where's the credit report, and they're
Right.
entitled to it.
Right, of
So
course.
I just had a deposition a week ago. We were supposed to go to trial, and we're like, well, we just found out he owned a business.
12 months of, exactly, because
Yeah.
Will found out.
Right. And
12
also,
months of your bank statements
Yes.
and everything,
Yes.
and they get really
You go through
in-depth.
the bank statements. Now, not
Yes.
everybody's going to do that.
Right,
So
right.
it takes time and
it
money.
takes a lot of time.
And
yeah,
that
I
would be a
know.
good way to prove if you're going to bars or doing things
Of
that
course.
you probably shouldn't
Or
be. So
buying
it can actually
alcohol.
work in a.
We have the video, we have the receipts, we have the bank statements.
Oh, yes.
We put all that together.
Yeah, they'll
It's-
say, "Oh, I wasn't buying alcohol," and then you're buying it. Oh, good caller.
It's a toll-free call. Is that, you think it's...
Try it.
Hello?
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 Yes, I was just calling to speak in on the local podcast.
Yes, how can I help you?
I was just calling with a question in regards to kind of along the lines of what they're talking about right now, and as far as like willful unemployment. I was recently in a case where my ex-husband changed jobs, willingly left his job to make less money, and then have child support reduced. The new job also took his time sharing and changed it as he started taking a job that was at night, and he couldn't cover his night shift, but was still going on the guidelines saying that he was having the kids for that amount of nights that we had originally agreed upon, not taking those nights, giving them to his mom, his girlfriend, whatever. And I'm just wondering now what you recommend in regards to that situation, and what information I would need to know as far as going back to court and having that modified.
Yeah, so the court will go back for a period of time as well. So if he's kind of working off that same schedule, but that's not happening, you want to make sure you can document it any way you can. And it can't be, this is a mistake I see some people make. They'll send a text message to the person or an email to the other parent saying, hey, you didn't show up tonight. But they don't respond. You need something from them. So if you can get anything from them that says, hey, why aren't the kids here? And there's some kind of response, or why isn't my child where they're supposed to be? The willful unemployment depends on a judge's discretion again. So he can look at how long did he have the other job, what's his education, should he really be making that money, why did he make that choice? Because there are reasons sometimes to lower, but yeah, he can be held accountable for the old amount if he willfully did that.
Right,
so they won't adjust the child support, he'll be stuck with the original amount if a judge can really see that.
And I feel bad for the caller because, her life is based financially, from what it sounds like, on what she was promised for child support. So you base your, budget on what you're getting, and then all of a sudden it just gets ripped from you. What do you do in that case,
So yeah, you're going to ask the judge, you can do a temporary needs, which is a quicker route.
Yeah.
So the judge can do something temporary without hearing all the evidence. And if he sees, okay, historically this is what he was paying in child support and what she needed for the children, so he needs to keep paying this. And if not, then he's in contempt of court. It's tough for people because, one, this costs money to do. If you do it on your own, it's a little tricky and hard. There is, at every county, there is a place where they do, where they have legal help in the courthouse, and they can help you fill out forms. There's also a lot of agencies. Well, I do it at the Family Life Center in Bunnell. I'll go once a month or so, and we'll go over there and we'll help people fill out their forms and try to get them as much education as they can, because they have to do this without spending that money, because you don't have the money. You need the money.
Right. And some judges will make you go ahead and let's say they'll base your let's say the child support on your income, on your let's say potential income, and not think about let's say if you reduce your income just by taking a lower paying job, that doesn't cut it.
Correct.
So
Correct.
Well, caller, can you hold?
And it goes along the lines with my other question too, is that if you have especially here in Volusia County and Flagler, there's a lot of bike events and tourism and things where people get paid under the table for bartending and side jobs, and those don't have paper trails. And then how do you get that included? Because for some people that's a significant increase in their income. But apparently I was told that doesn't have to be included because there's no record of it.
Okay, caller, if you can wait 1 second, we just have to take a commercial break, but we will answer your call in just a second, your question, okay? Okay, caller, we're going to go back to your question and have Ms. McGee answer that.
Sure. So, I mean, the idea that it doesn't have to be included is wrong. It does have to be included. Catching them is maybe another story.
That's why we need the PI.
Correct. You need the PI.
That's where Will comes in.
You watch those digital, like the Venmo, the Cash App. You can watch that. Watch for cash. I had one. He was a waiter. I went through his bank statements. We saw the cash deposits. Like sometimes they're not all that smart about it.
That's right.
They think you're just going to overlook it because of the detail it takes. And I think that's something that even as a pro se, you're entitled to those bank statements, and you can take the time and go through it. I mean, it doesn't take a lawyer to see that he's making cash deposits that don't match up to anything.
That's right.
Or that he's buying things, or he bought things. They don't show up on the bank statement, so you can ask, well, where'd the money come for that? Is there another account or something that I don't see?
Okay.
And the credit reports, too, help catch some things.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Caller, did you go ahead?
I have one more question also. So in regards to the 50/50, the new law that's coming out, like in my situation where the father of my children can't physically take them nights during the week, like how does that work out?
So then
And like is he allowed to just make provisions on the nights that he's saying he's going to cover them, like leaving them with his mom, his girlfriend, whoever? Is that like we'll have to address that in court also?
Yeah, because that was going to be one of my questions. If they have a job and they can't cover it, does the judge, if you're more flexible, go back to the other parent?
So that's called a right of first refusal, and that's something you want in your parenting plan. So you have to ask the judge for that.
What if you don't have a parenting plan and you're not married? And you were never married?
Then you're in a space where either the father hasn't been established as the dad, or if he has, you're both entitled to do whatever you want kind of thing. So it's a scary place to be in, I think, as a parent, to not have some type of parenting plan in place.
Yeah, because you can take the child out of town and go anywhere.
Anywhere.
Right. And
You can move,
right.
relocate.
In that case, if you do have first right of refusal, but he's not going along with that and saying, oh, well, I'm going to take them, I'll make sure they're cared for, so it counts as by night, like, what do you do about that?
So that would be a motion for contempt.
Right.
Contempt of
After
court.
contempt of court.
Because your parenting plan is a court order. So that is like law now. He has to follow it, you have to follow it. Unless you both agree, you have to follow it, and otherwise you're violating a court order.
That's true.
So you can leave if you don't have an order and just leave with your child, and then if they decide to come back years later or they found out you're gone, would the judge, and say they haven't been present in the child's life in years, would the judge make you come back?
No, so
Okay.
it's 6 months to establish residency anywhere, so
Okay.
that's kind of the overlap. So if you go and you leave, and a month later he's like, "Where are you?" and
Exactly.
files something, you're not in that time frame because you didn't, But if nothing's been established, you were allowed to leave.
Yeah.
So he won't necessarily make you come back unless they look at the circumstances and think it's in the best interest of the child.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have any more questions, caller?
No, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, that was a great call.
Excellent.
We went over the child support guidelines, and what do you think about SoberLink? I had someone ask me about SoberLink and DNA testing to go way back to show a pattern of behavior.
So I think if it's called for, it's great. I'm very about your constitutional rights too, and that whole parenting, your parenting is that right. So it's tough to want to deal with these hard situations when you have those rights and counter it with being able to intrude on somebody in a way for those things. When it's called for, it's great. They can, really see what's going on to be sure that enough time has gone by that it's safe for the children.
So do you randomly just take it, or there's certain, or do they just say when you have to take it, or how does?
There's criteria.
Oh,
So sometimes
okay.
it can be just the other parent can request it. They can request a drug test, they can request that. So they can give them that liberal right, like something doesn't feel right under certain parameters, they can request it, or they can say monthly. It all depends every time we visit. I have one right now, like every time he visits, he has to do it. They know he's gonna have a long-term issues because of mental health. And sometimes it's, some of them, these aren't always bad characters. You have your vets, PTSD, that struggle with a lot of stuff, and you want to support them, but it's not really safe for the children.
Right.
Right. Most definitely.
What are your takes on medical marijuana? That was another question about people who use medical marijuana, get in their car after they do it or do something crazy.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It is. So what I've seen happening in the court system and what we've done in our caseloads is they're not allowed to do it while they're taking care of the child.
Right.
I have one right now where they say we always do it every night at bed. And I'm like, what if there's an emergency in the middle of the night?
That's
Exactly.
right. That's right. Yeah.
So it affects their credibility and their space on that 50-50 line in custody. It starts hurting them when they're under a substance like that. They won't get their kid taken away. I'm not going to suggest that. But it does affect the balancing beam when you're trying to pull it in your direction.
So if you're a couple and say you're at work and you want mom to watch, but mom is older or has issues and is on medical marijuana, first right of refusal would come in and you would want the child to go back with the mom, especially if they have medical needs or something like that, because of their cognitive level by taking the marijuana.
Yeah,
So that would
just
backfire.
like,
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your take on medical marijuana? I know you've seen people smoke it in cars and do crazy things with it, and
Yes.
they don't follow the rules.
Yeah, so you follow someone and they have children in the car smoking weed or something, but they'll say, hey, you don't know if that's what I'm smoking and everything. That's why we rely on social media a lot. And but yeah, no, that's something that should never be done in a child custody case or anything. No alcohol, no marijuana. I know some people say it's a medication. I don't care. It shouldn't be something allowed when it comes to care of a child.
So in your experience, when you are granted 100% custody, what are some of the criteria or what are some of the issues that are going on that the judge sees that could potentially be dangerous to the child that another parent would be awarded the 100%?
Substance abuse is definitely up there. That's probably the most common one. I have one where they've just made really poor decisions about who they're allowing in their home.
Yes.
There's felons in their home, and they're like, I'm not doing anything, but you're associating consistently with people that are getting arrested or getting in trouble or have a long history of some bad stuff. So that's something where they can lose, especially where they get in a place where a judge says, well, they never take you away. There's always a route back. They kind of almost always is. So you clean up, there's a route back. If you do X, Y, and Z.
You mean like AA and things like that and programs?
It can be AA, it can be programs, it can be supervised visitation for 3 months, then for a couple hours, then for a full day, then one overnight. Like if you put you as a consistent, you can't miss it. And one of an attorney and a judge that I was talking to said 6 months is like that magic number. If they have a problem, they're not making it past 6 months.
That's right.
They won't be consistent. They can't.
You're right.
And are people,
It's a pattern.
so when they go to the facilities, are there psychiatrists or people actually watching the interaction to be like, this child's not safe or doesn't feel safe around this parent, we might have an issue here? Are they actually monitoring things like that?
So I think they're more the line with therapists. I don't think you're getting psychologists or psychiatrists in that role, but there are social investigations, I think, that are getting more popular than even just the GAL. And the social investigation involves a lot more, where they have therapists and people and psychologists who will get involved. They can do psychiatric evaluations on the parents as well as what's going on with the child as a result of what they're experiencing, or maybe what they've witnessed. And so that involves visits in the home with the child in both homes, talking to the child separately, getting therapy and all of that. And those social investigations will write a report to the judge.
Jennifer, we've got one more topic here is securing a firearm. I always want to secure a firearm. When you have, let's say, a child present, always have the firearm
Yeah, I've been
secured.
places and seen guns on the
Yes.
floor and things like that, and
No,
then they want
not
the
acceptable.
Yeah, they want
No.
kids to run around and.
I actually have one where he's in a safety plan, and he's probably going to go a long time. He is former military and has guns, and actually wanted to push to be able to keep them when watching the child. And we're like, absolutely not. We're not agreeing to that. So he had to give them up in order to enter his safety plan, and that showed kind of where his thought process was. He wasn't even
Right.
seeing that was a problem. You're not mentally
And
well.
that's scary.
Yes.
That's very scary.
Right,
Yeah.
I would like you, while we're sitting here talking, to give everyone your phone number and talk about your law firm. So if anyone has any questions tomorrow or anything moving forward, they can give you a call.
Yeah, thank you. My phone number is 386-320-7300. I'm right in Palm Coast. I have Facebook, and my website is McGeeLawFL.com. And like I said, we do free consultations. I always talk to everybody. I want them to be informed before they make decisions. And if I can even direct you in a way, if you can't afford the services, I always try to do that as well.
Excellent.
That's excellent. thank you again too for being a part of this.
Yes, thank you very much for coming
This
in.
is definitely. I had a question here. Are we allowed to take more questions?
We have time for one.
We have time for one. My ex has been gone for several years, not been involved in my teenage son's life. He now says that I kidnapped his son after 5 years, wants 50-50, but my 17-year-old son wants nothing to do with him. How do I handle that?
So I guess it's sometimes when people say that, that might just be someone contacted them and said things, and there's a difference if they actually filed. So the 17-year-old child definitely has a voice. And I mean, this stuff takes 6 months to a year, I said. He's probably going to turn 18 before he gets anywhere. And at 18, he's not going to be able to make him do anything. But I would do a motion to have the child testify right up front. And usually that will back people off because they get to spend a lot of money to make this happen. And you want the judge to be able to talk to the child in that sense.
What happens in the case if you have a teenager and they don't want to go to the other parent because the other parent's cooler or the other one they fight? And I mean, because legally you're responsible for that child, but if they're not going to go and they're driving themselves or something like that, what do you do?
It's really hard. I wish I could say what to do. It is tough. I've seen parents struggle. It's really great when they can communicate. And even if there's parenting coordinators, there's people who can help them. Because if the parents can work together and be on one team, that changes the whole dynamic.
Yes.
Even if you have different households, if you're supporting each other as parents, it changes the dynamic. When you're pitted against each other, you're not benefiting your child because they will manipulate. They're children.
Yes.
They're learning how to rebel and be their own people. They will manipulate.
Okay, and then the final question, that was going back to that one question. 5 years, now all of a sudden the child's been kidnapped and he knew where they're at.
You know, you
Does
hear
a
these
ju-
outrageous.
Like, what does the judge say when you're like,
They hear it every day. So
Okay.
don't worry. Like, it's very worrisome to hear someone say that about you as a
Yeah.
parent. So don't worry too much. Stick to your guns. Be calm and tell the judge your story. They do listen. They hear it all the time.
It says, of course, false accusations, as you know.
Very common.
Yes, very,
Very
common.
common.
And they'll say, well, someone tried to kill an individual or does all these off-the-wall things, or say, well, why don't you call the police? And that ends it.
They always are like,
Yes.
well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't have
was
my
trying to
phone.
be-
Or something stupid. Yeah. It's insane.
I have one last question about how does social media affect child care cases, child support cases, like family law in general?
Oh, it's golden. It's golden
It
for
is.
me.
Yeah.
Not so much for everybody
It's golden
else.
for people who have the proof of stuff that.
I mean, like we were talking about proving someone's drinking. I
Oh,
have
it's
one
perfect. I
of my with
love
the
it.
funnel at the kid's birthday
Oh,
party.
no.
Pouring it
You can
down.
also,
Yeah,
and
I was
someone
seeing
wrote something
that.
about like sex and porn addictions and things like that. If they're on multiple dating sites or doing crazy
Yes.
stuff and you have proof of it, all of that could come out too. And if you say it's a dad with a little girl, that could be a little bit,
OnlyFans.
a red
Oh,
flag.
yeah, OnlyFans is another
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
but then now's the rise of also female offenders too. Female
Yeah.
sex offenders as well, and
Yeah.
so just not just one-sided.
well, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate you, and you are welcomed back anytime to talk about anything regarding this topic or anything that you.
Thank you for having me. I
Definitely.
really
Thanks.
had a good
Thanks for
time.
coming in.
Thank you.
And that's a hot take with Chrissy and Will, and we'll see you next Thursday night at 7 p.m. We're working on some new stuff, and make sure tomorrow you tune in at 1 o'clock for Friday Foodies. We'll
Ooh.
be live. Alan's going to learn how
Sounds
to
good.
do remotely, so this is going to be interesting.
Very.
So we're excited. So
Can't
see you
wait.
guys then, and have a great night.
Have a good night, everyone.